in an era where NFL safeties were expected to hit hard and hit often, Bob Sanders wasn't just meeting expectations, he was obliterating them.
Let's see, one of my favorite football players of all time was Bob Sanders. He won Defensive MVP one year. He was a first ballot Hall of Famer.
A 5'8" missile with the heart of a giant.
And it's intercepted, picked off by Bob Sanders.
Pressure, and he's blasted!
Sanders flew across the field like he had something to prove every single down. And maybe he did. Because while most of the league overlooked him due to size, it's what they couldn't measure: his passion, his toughness, his obsession with impact that made him one of the most feared defenders in the NFL. But this is not a fairy tale. This is the tragic story of Bob Sanders, an all-pro safety who could have been an all-time great if only his body had held up. Bob Sanders was born in Erie, Pennsylvania in 1981, a blue-collar city where cold winters built calluses and kids grew up fast. He was raised in a tough environment where nothing came easy and toughness wasn't a choice. It was a necessity. For Sanders, pain and persistence were a part of daily life. If you weren't willing to hit back harder, life would hit you down for good. Even as a kid, his size drew snickers. At just 5'8", and that might have been a stretch, he didn't fit the mold of a future NFL player. But what he lacked in height, he more than made up for with ferocity. He was built like a tank and moved like a rocket. It wasn't long before coaches stopped worrying about his size and started worrying about the safety of the players he tackled. At Cathedral Prep High School, Sanders didn't just play both sides of the ball, he dominated. Running back, defensive back, special teams, you name it, he did it. He racked up over 1,300 rushing yards and nearly 150 tackles in a single season. But despite the numbers, big-name colleges weren't calling. He was too small, too risky. Enter University of Iowa. At the time, Iowa wasn't exactly a football powerhouse, but it was a team built on grit, grind, and hard work. And Bob Sanders? He was the embodiment of all three. He walked onto campus with a chip on his shoulder and left as a legend. Once he got there, he changed everything. When Sanders arrived in Iowa City, he wasn't handed anything. He earned every snap through relentless hustle, outworking teammates in the weight room, film sessions, and on the practice field. And then in just his second game as a freshman, he exploded onto the scene, forcing a fumble and blocking a punt. Iowa fans took notice. So did the Big Ten. From that moment on, he became the heart and soul of the Hawkeye defense. He played with violent efficiency, making tackles look like car crashes and turning every hit into a highlight reel. By his junior year, Sanders had helped lead Iowa to a share of the Big Ten title and a berth in the 2003 Orange Bowl, their first New Year's game in over a decade. Sanders racked up 348 tackles during his college career, forced fumbles, broke up passes, and terrorized receivers foolish enough to run routes over the middle. But perhaps his greatest accomplishment was giving Iowa something it hadn't had in years: swagger. NFL scouts couldn't ignore him anymore. Still, questions lingered. Could a 5'8" safety survive in the pros? The 2004 NFL Draft came with doubts swirling about Bob Sanders. His talent was obvious, but so were the risks. A player that small, who hit that hard, could easily burn out. But the Indianapolis Colts weren't looking for safe. They were looking for fire. They took a chance on him in the second round. And that gamble paid off. Immediately. Sanders brought something to Indianapolis that the franchise had desperately needed for years: an identity on defense. With Peyton Manning and the offense putting up 30 points a game, the Colts only needed a defense that could make a few stops. Sanders gave them a defense that could change games. In just his second season, he played 14 games and racked up 91 tackles and earned a Pro Bowl nod. He flew around the field with reckless abandon, shutting down runs and breaking up passes with brute force. He played with the urgency of a man chasing something that only he could see. But behind every great Bob Sanders highlight was a wince. Every hit felt like it came at a cost, and those costs started adding up. The Indianapolis Colts had always been an offensive juggernaut. With Peyton Manning under center, they led the league in passing, broke records, and made regular season dominance look routine. But every January, they ran into the same wall. They couldn't stop anyone. For all the fireworks, the Colts' Achilles heel was always their defense. But in 2006, that changed. And the reason? Bob Sanders. He missed most of the regular season, 12 games, due to a lingering knee injury. And when he returned late in the year, expectations were modest. No one knew if he could stay healthy. No one knew if he could make a difference. But then the playoffs started, and Bob Sanders flipped the switch. In the divisional round against the Ravens, he was everywhere, sniffing out runs, punishing receivers, and picking off Steve McNair on a crucial third-quarter drive. He helped limit Baltimore to just 6 points. The Colts offense didn't have to be perfect because their defense finally held its ground. Then came the AFC Championship, Colts versus the Patriots, Brady versus Manning, the biggest game of the year. And while the spotlight stayed on the quarterback, Sanders quietly delivered one of the greatest performances of his career.
It's Maroney fumbling, ball still loose.
Racking up 11 tackles, playing downhill like a linebacker, and closing in from sideline to sideline with blinding speed. He brought physicality to a finesse team, heart to a brainy machine. And in Super Bowl 41, played in a monsoon in Miami, Sanders helped the Colts suffocate the Chicago Bears offense that was supposed to run all over them. Bob Sanders was the tone setter, the enforcer. He played like a man possessed. The Colts won their first Super Bowl since 1970. And without Bob Sanders, they didn't get there. In 2007, Bob Sanders stayed healthy, and the rest of the league felt every bit of it. He was a human missile, a one-man wrecking crew. He played the safety position like a linebacker with cornerback speed.
Good protection, running out of time and tackled at the 15 by Bob Sanders.
Hitting like a freight train, but reading plays like a chess master. He racked up 96 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, and countless moments where you could hear the collision from the upper deck. Every week, there was a highlight reel of Sanders blowing up a screen pass, splitting double teams, and delivering hits that made receivers rethink their careers.
A moment ago, his 38 is high and intercepted by Bob Sanders. And Jones threw on a sweep around the end.
Quarterbacks stopped throwing deep. Tight ends chipped at the line. Slot receivers kept their heads on a swivel. And everyone knew if Bob Sanders was in the box, your margin for error was 0.
He's in trouble, and Richardson.
That season, the NFL took notice. Sanders was named Defensive Player of the Year, becoming only the second safety in league history to ever win that award, joining Ed Reed in rare company. He was voted first-team All-Pro, selected to his second Pro Bowl, and universally recognized as the heartbeat of the Colts defense. For a brief shining moment, Bob Sanders wasn't just the best safety in the NFL, he was one of the most dominant defenders in the entire game. But the same fire that powered him was already starting to burn out. Bob Sanders had always played with a reckless abandon. That was his gift and his curse. By 2008, the injuries that once lurked in the background began taking center stage. He missed 10 games that season with knee and ankle issues. The Colts managed to hold on without him, but their defense was never quite the same. Then came 2009. Just 2 games in, Sanders tore his biceps, gone for the season.
For Crabtree off his head, intercepted by Bob Sanders.
A year later in 2010, he returned for the opener. Hopes were high. Maybe this would be the comeback. Maybe he could stay on the field. But just a few snaps in, it happened again. Another torn biceps, another lost season. In the span of 3 years, Bob Sanders played in just 9 games. Each comeback ended in pain. Each recovery turned into another injury report. And for the man who relied on his body as a weapon, there was nothing more cruel than watching it betray him over and over again. By 2011, the Colts, heartbroken and exhausted, made the hardest decision they've ever had to make. They released him. The most electrifying defender in franchise history, gone. Just like that. Bob Sanders wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. In 2011, he signed with the San Diego Chargers, hoping for a fresh start and a final act. There was cautious optimism. If he could stay healthy, just for a season, maybe he could recapture the magic. But it didn't happen. Sanders played in just 2 games for the Chargers before injuries struck again. Another stint on the injured reserve. Another promise unfulfilled. The game had taken too much from him. His knees, his arms, his explosiveness, his prime. After that, he never played another down. There was no farewell press conference, no long goodbye, no jersey retirement or tribute video. Just silence. Bob Sanders walked away at 30 years old, one of the fiercest defenders the league had ever seen. Without fanfare, without closure. When we talk about the great safeties of the 2000s, names like Troy Polamalu, Ed Reed, and Brian Dawkins dominate the conversation, and rightfully so. But Bob Sanders deserves a seat at that table. Because for a brief window in NFL history, no one was more feared, no one hit harder, no one changed the games the way Sanders did. He played just 50 regular season games for the Colts, but what he did in those games left an imprint larger than any box score. He redefined what it meant to play safety. He gave Indianapolis an edge. He turned finesse into firepower. He brought a Super Bowl to a team that had never been able to finish the job. His legacy isn't measured in longevity, it's measured in intensity. Bob Sanders is a reminder that greatness doesn't always last. Sometimes it flashes like lightning, bright, violent, unforgettable, and disappears before you're ready to say goodbye.
Until we get one, we're gonna bring it back. DBs, holla at me, baby!
Bob Sanders didn't play long, but he played furiously. And those who saw him, they'll never forget him. Bob Sanders will forever be one of the biggest what-if stories in NFL history.